Chosen one, when money comes from God, keep quiet and stay wise the moment your life changes. That is the most dangerous moment of your entire journey. Not the struggle, not the waiting, not the years of barely making it. The moment it finally works, that is when most people lose everything they just received, and nobody warns you about that. Nobody sits you down and says, "Hey, when the blessing finally arrives, the very first thing you need to do is be quiet about it." Because here's what happens. God moves, money shifts, a door opens that you've been knocking on for years. And the first thing most people do out of pure joy, out of relief, out of years of feeling invisible, is tell somebody. And that one conversation changes everything. Not always immediately, sometimes slowly, but it changes things. So before your blessing arrives, and it is arriving, I need to prepare you for what to do when it does. Because receiving the miracle is only half the assignment. Keeping it is. The other half, stay with me. Let me tell you what's really going on inside you right now. You have been struggling in silence for a long time. And when I say silence, I don't mean nobody knew things were hard. I mean you've been carrying a weight that most people around you didn't fully understand. You smiled at the right moments. You said, "I'm good," when someone asked. You kept showing up to work, to family dinners, to church, to obligations, while inside you were quietly drowning. There's a very specific kind of exhaustion that comes from suffering quietly for too long. It's the exhaustion of being strong when you wanted to fall apart. It's the exhaustion of watching others celebrate while you were still waiting. It's the exhaustion of praying prayers that felt like they were hitting the ceiling and bouncing back. So when God finally moves, when the money comes, when the shift happens, when the answer to all those prayers suddenly materializes in your bank account, or in an unexpected phone call, or in a deal that goes through after months of uncertainty, the emotional release is overwhelming. You want to scream. You want to call everyone who watched you struggle. You want to post about it. You want to walk into every room that ever doubted you and say, "See, I told you something was coming." And that feeling is completely human. Completely understandable. The problem is, it is also one of the most spiritually dangerous things you can do at that moment. This video is about teaching you why, and how to protect what God just sent you. Silence is not insecurity, it's strategy. The first thing I want to clear up is this. Staying quiet about your blessing is not the same as being ashamed of it. It is not humility pretending to be poverty. It is not hiding your light under a basket. It is strategy. When a general is planning a military operation, he doesn't broadcast the plan to the entire base. Not because the plan is weak, but because the plan is weak, but because the plan is valuable. The more powerful the mission, the tighter the circle of people who know about it. Your financial breakthrough is a mission. God gave it to you with a purpose, attached a purpose that involves your family, your future, your calling. And just like a general, you protect what is precious by limiting who has access to the details. There's a reason why the most successful people you admire, the ones who built real, lasting wealth, are often the quietest ones in the room. They didn't get rich by announcing their moves. They got rich by making their moves and letting the results speak years later when everything was already secured. Silence is not weakness. It is one of the most powerful tools a chosen person can carry. Not everyone celebrating with you is happy for you. This is the truth that stings a little, so I'm going to say it gently, but I'm going to say it clearly. Some of the people who will smile the widest when you share your blessing are the same people who will quietly resent you for it by the following week. That is not a cynical statement. That is a deeply human one. We live in a world where people love the idea of seeing others win, but the reality of someone close to them winning, while they are still waiting for their own breakthrough, can trigger something painful and unexpected inside them. Jealousy doesn't always look like hostility. Sometimes it looks like subtle discouragement. Sometimes it looks like a small comment that plants a seed of doubt. Sometimes it looks like a friend who suddenly becomes distant, or a family member who starts finding reasons to need financial help the moment they find out you have it. None of this makes those people villains. It makes them human. But it makes you responsible for being wise about what you share and with whom. The Bible itself warns about this. Joseph told his brothers about his dream and they threw him in a pit. His dream wasn't wrong. His timing was. He told the right vision to the wrong audience, Learn from Joseph. The dream is real. The blessing is real. But not every relationship is ready to celebrate it with you without it costing you something. Money attracts energy, and not all energy is clean. Here's something that goes a little deeper, and I want you to think about it carefully. Everything carries energy. People carry energy. Conversations carry energy. Emotions carry energy. And when you share information about a financial shift in your life, you are opening that blessing to the energy of everyone who receives the news. Some people will hear about your blessing and genuinely pray for its growth. Their energy, their joy, their faith on your behalf adds something to what God is building in your life. But other people will hear about your blessing and feel something very different: envy, comparison, resentment, even unconsciously. And that energy, directed at what God has given you, can create invisible friction in your progress that you won't always be able to trace back to its source. This is why spiritual wisdom in almost every tradition, not just Christianity, teaches about protecting new blessings the way you protect a newborn baby. You don't take a newborn into a crowd immediately. You protect it. You nurture it in a safe environment until it's strong enough to handle the outside world. Your blessing is a newborn. It needs time in a protected space before it's exposed to the noise, the opinions, and the mixed energies of everyone around. You give it that time. Guard it the way God guarded it while he was preparing it quietly, carefully, and with great intention. The mouth is where most blessings go to die. Let me paint you a picture. Someone receives an unexpected financial opportunity, a business deal, an inheritance, a job offer that changes their income level completely. In their excitement, they tell 3 people they trust. Those 3 people each tell 2 more. Within a week, 15 people know the details of something. That hadn't even fully closed yet, and then the deal falls through, or complications arise, or the money takes longer than expected to materialize. Now that person doesn't just have a delayed blessing, they have a public delay. They have to face the questions, the whatever happened to that thing you mentioned conversations, the looks, the quiet satisfaction of people who secretly didn't want them to win anyway. And beyond the social cost, something spiritually significant happens when we speak blessings before they are fully formed. There is a concept in wisdom literature across cultures. Speaking something prematurely can actually slow its manifestation. Not because words have magic power to cancel God's plans, but because premature announcement shifts your own energy from faith and expectation to performance and pressure. You stop walking in quiet confidence and start trying to prove something to the people who now know what you said was coming. Pray about it. Work toward it. Believe for it. But keep your mouth closed until it's fully in your hands. Why God specifically chooses quiet people to carry big blessings? Have you ever noticed that the people God seems to trust with the most transformational blessings are often the ones who don't make a lot of noise? That's not a coincidence. Quietness is not just a personality trait, it's a spiritual capacity. The ability to sit with something sacred and not immediately broadcast it to the world signals to God that you have the maturity to steward what He's about to release into your care. Think about it from God's perspective for a moment. If He gives someone a blessing and that person immediately turns it into a performance, posting about it, boasting about it, using it as social ammunition, what has that person demonstrated? That the blessing exists to serve their ego. That they need external validation more than they need the gift itself. But the person who receives the blessing quietly, who kneels in private gratitude, who makes their plans carefully, who moves forward without making an announcement, that person has demonstrated something powerful. They've shown that they understand the source of the blessing matters more than the status it creates. God looks for those people. And when He finds them, He tends to keep blessing them because He knows the blessing will be honored, not wasted. If you are a naturally quiet, private person who has been made to feel like that's somehow a disadvantage, hear me clearly. Your quietness is one of your greatest spiritual assets. It has been protecting your blessings long before they arrived. The dangerous trap of celebrating too early there is a difference between the promise of a blessing and the possession of a blessing. And treating the promise like it's already the possession is one of the most common ways people accidentally derail what God is doing. You get the good news, the job offer letter comes, the business deal is verbally agreed upon, the check is supposedly in the mail, and the relief is so massive that you respond as if the money is already in your hands. You make plans. You make promises. You might even spend money you don't have yet in anticipation, and then something shifts. Not because God changed his mind, but because the timing wasn't what you assumed, or there was one more step in the process you didn't know about, or God was testing whether you'd stay grounded even in the excitement. Premature celebration doesn't just set you up for embarrassment. It pulls your spirit out of the posture of faith and into the posture of assumption. And assumption is not the same as faith. Faith holds expectation with humility. Assumption holds expectation with entitlement. And God doesn't respond to entitlement the same way he responds to faith. So celebrate, yes. Feel the joy, absolutely. But do it privately with God in your quiet place. Let your spirit rejoice. Let your heart be full. Just don't let your mouth make announcements that your hands haven't confirmed yet. Wisdom means knowing who gets a seat at the table of your testimony. Let's talk about discernment, because staying quiet doesn't mean staying silent with everyone forever. There will come a time to share your story. There will come a time when your testimony of financial struggle turning into financial breakthrough will be exactly what someone else needs to hear to keep holding on. That time is real, and it matters. God didn't bring you through the fire just to keep the lesson to yourself. But wisdom is knowing who gets that story, when they get it, and how much they get. Your testimony is not a press release. It's a gift, and like any gift, it should be given to people who will value it, not people who will use it against you. Compare it to their own story, or let it change how they treat you. The inner circle gets the full story when the blessing is secure, when the roots are deep, when one's opinion can shake what God has established. The outer circle gets the inspiration, not the numbers, not the details, not the vulnerability of something still being built. There is nothing wrong with protecting different levels of information for different levels of relationship. That's not deception. That's wisdom. Jesus himself spoke in parables to the crowds and in plain truth to his disciples. He understood that not everyone is at the same level of readiness to receive the same depth of information. Know your circles. Guard accordingly. What happens to your blessing when you stay quiet about it? I want to flip this and show you the other side, because this conversation isn't just about what you lose by talking. It's about what you gain by staying still. When you receive a financial blessing and you choose to protect it in silence, something remarkable happens in that quiet space. You are forced to sit with the blessing alone, just you and God. And in that private space, something grows. Gratitude deepens. Because you're not performing it for an audience, it becomes real. You find yourself genuinely moved by what God did not, because you want anyone to see your thankfulness, but because in the quiet, the fullness of what happened truly lands. Clarity sharpens. When you haven't told anyone, you're not managing anyone's expectations or responding to anyone's advice. You have clean, clear mental space to hear what God wants you to do with what he gave you. And those instructions received in the quiet tend to be far wiser than any advice you'd gather from a group of excited friends. Confidence builds. There's a specific kind of strength that comes from walking in a blessing that nobody knows about yet. You sit in meetings and conversations carrying something sacred and private. That internal confidence, not arrogance, not pride, but a settled knowing, changes how you walk, how you speak, how you make decisions. People feel it without being able to name it. Silence doesn't diminish your blessing. It cultivates it. Learning to trust God's timing even when it's tempting to announce, here's where I want to get very personal with you for a moment. I know that part of the reason you want to share the blessing is because the silence of struggle was so lonely. You carried so much alone for so long, and the idea of finally having good news to share feels like a reward you've earned. It feels like it's finally your turn to be the one with something to celebrate. And you're right, it is your turn. But I want to invite you to consider a different kind of celebration. The kind that happens in your prayer closet at midnight when you're crying tears of relief and whispering, "Thank you" to a God who came through when everything looked impossible. The kind that happens when you sit at your kitchen table, alone, looking at a number in an account that wasn't there last month, and feeling something so deep that no social media caption could ever hold it. That kind of celebration is not less than the public kind. It is more. It is fuller. It is safer. And it connects you to your blessing in a way that public announcement never could, because nobody can take it from you. Nobody can comment on it. Nobody can dilute it with their opinion. Trust God's timing, not just for when the blessing arrives, but for when the testimony is ready to be shared. He'll give you a sign. He'll create the right moment, the right audience, the right platform for your story. And when he does, it will land with a power that your premature announcement never could have carried. The chosen one moves in silence and lets the results testify. This last one is the heartbeat of everything I've said today. The most powerful testimony is not the one you announce. It's the one that people witness. When you stay quiet, work wisely, steward your blessing with discipline and faith, and let time do its work, one day people will see the results without you having said a single word. And what they will see will be undeniable. Not a story you told them, not a number you shared, not a highlight you posted, but a life transformed, stable, fruitful, peaceful, that speaks louder than any announcement you could have made. That is the testimony of the chosen one. Not loud, not performative, not rushed, but irrefutable. You don't have to prove the blessing is real by announcing it. God will prove it is real by sustaining it, multiplying it, and letting it overflow into the lives of people around you in ways that nobody can argue with. Move in quiet faith. Let your life make the noise. And trust that the God who brought it to you will bring the right people to witness it at exactly the right time. You came to this video for a reason. Maybe you're on the edge of a financial shift and something in your spirit knew you needed this message before it arrived. Maybe you've already received a blessing and you're feeling the pull to shout it from the roofs. Maybe you're somewhere in the middle, waiting, believing, holding on, and you needed to be reminded that what's coming for you is worth protecting from the moment it arrives. Whatever brought you here, I want you to leave with this anchored in your heart. The chosen one doesn't just receive the blessing. The chosen one carries it with wisdom, with grace, and with the understanding that what God sends is sacred, and sacred things deserve to be treated carefully. You are not ordinary. You were not built for ordinary. The struggles you have walked through, the prayers you have prayed, the faith you have held on to in the dark, none of that was for nothing. It was formation. It was preparation. And everything that's heading toward you now is the answer to a prayer that never left God's hands. So when it arrives, and it will do this, go quiet, go grateful, go wise, make your plans in peace, move in faith without needing applause. Let God get the glory, not just in your words, but in the undeniable evidence of a life that he turned around. And one day, on the other side of the silence, on the other side of the discipline, on the other side of the wisdom, you will have a story to tell that will shake rooms, not because you hyped it up, but because you lived it, carefully, faithfully, quietly. That is your assignment. You are ready for it.